President Trump says that US forces have totally obliterated every military target on Iran's Kharg Island, the country's main export terminal for oil in the Gulf. In response, Iran threatened to reduce US-linked oil facilities to a pile of ashes. As the war enters its third week, Iranian media reported that 15 explosions had been heard on the island. US Central Command said it struck more than 90 military targets on the island. In the latest development, an intercepted drone strike has hit one of the largest oil storage facilities in the Middle East, suspending some operations. The attack in the port of Fujairah in the UAE caused huge clouds of smoke across the complex. Further across the Middle East, evacuation orders have been issued in several areas of Qatar, and one of the region's largest oil storage facilities in the UAE has been targeted by Iranian drones. This follows the news that the US expected to send more ships and Marines to the Middle East. The reinforcements are expected to come from an amphibious ready group led by the USS Tripoli, which is currently in Japan or has moved on from Japan. Simon Jones has the latest.
The Iran war enters its third week. President Trump marked the occasion by posting these pictures on social media. He described strikes on military targets on Kharg Island, Iran's main export terminal for oil, as one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East. Tehran, he claimed, was totally defeated and wanted a deal, but he wouldn't say for how long the war will continue.
I can't tell you that. I mean, I have my own idea, but what good does it do? It'll be as long as it's necessary. They've been decimated. Their country's in bad shape. The whole thing is collapsing.
Tehran, in response, warned that oil and energy infrastructure belonging to firms that cooperate with the US would be turned into a pile of ashes if Iran's energy facilities are attacked. The US president hasn't ruled out further strikes on Kharg Island should Iran continue to interfere with shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, the vital passage for oil supplies from the region. There are reports the US will send additional forces, including the USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship, along with thousands of Marines to the Gulf. The Pentagon declined to comment, citing operational security. Despite President Trump's claim that Iran is finished militarily, Tehran and its allies continue to target their neighbors. The US embassy in the Iraqi capital Baghdad has been struck by a missile. In the United Arab Emirates, a fire broke out at this port used to store oil. Officials said it was caused by falling debris from a destroyed drone. And Iranian state media says the Islamic Revolutionary Guards have launched further attacks against northern Israel. In another front in the war, Israel has hit targets in Lebanon. That's where the Iranian-backed armed group Hezbollah is based. This was the aftermath of a strike on Beirut. The Lebanese health ministry said that at least 12 medics died in a town in the south of the country when a healthcare center was hit. Hezbollah is warning it is ready for a long confrontation, and Israel says it is too.
The global and regional struggle against Iran, led by the US President Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is ramping up and entering the decisive stretch that will continue as long as necessary.
And in Tehran, while some residents say they are scared to leave their homes, others insist they won't be intimidated.
We are living under normal conditions. We haven't left Tehran and will never abandon it. We are here, and until our last breath, we'll fight for our country and our nation.
Despite such defiance, the US is insisting its mission in the Middle East is ahead of schedule. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Well, joining me now from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia is our security correspondent, Frank Gardner. Frank, how significant is it that we're seeing these US strikes on Kharg Island?
It's a definite escalation, there's no question about that, because Kharg is the economic jugular vein. It's the beating heart, sorry about all these cliches, but it really is vital to Iran's oil industry. It's the terminal, the export terminal through which 90% of Iran's oil exports go, mostly to China. Why? Because it's got deep water. The Gulf is a pretty shallow waterway, and most tankers can't pull up next to the Iranian mainland coastline, but they can get to Kharg Island. That's why it's important. Now, what the US has done is to hit the military facilities guarding the oil facilities. It hasn't yet hit those oil facilities, which is a complex network of pipes and various bits of machinery that are all connected to that industry. It's threatened to do that if Iran doesn't unblock the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, it's not physically blocked, but it is effectively blocked because Iran is targeting any tankers going through that, which is putting a chokehold on the world economy by choking off the oil and gas exports, making it too dangerous and too expensive for exporters to get their product through there. So this is a bit of a standoff, really, with both between Iran on the one hand and the US and Israel on the other hand, but mainly the US here. And of course, you mentioned there, or Simon Jones mentioned in his piece about the this amphibious-ready group that is coming from Japan, this US assault ship. That is basically prompting speculation. What is America's next move? Are they planning to invade Kharg Island and land troops on it and capture it? Then you've got to hold it. You know, this is exactly what President Trump was voted into office not to do, which is to embroil the US into yet more involvement in lengthy Middle East wars and commitments.
Yes, on that point, Frank, how prepared is the US to have troops on the ground to fight a sustained campaign on Kharg Island if that happens?
Not at all is the answer. I mean, look, the US is the foremost military power in the world. There's no question about that. And Iran is no match for it militarily. But what Iran is very good at is asymmetric warfare, is finding different ways of trying to somehow bridge the gap in capability. And it knows that it's only got to survive this war, this so-called Operation Epic Fury, to win. If at the end of all of this, and President Trump declares victory, it's not about how many targets you've hit. It's not about saying it's the biggest, most dramatic military strike in the history of the Middle East or whatever it is. None of that matters if at the end of all of this, the Islamic Republic regime is still standing, is still a threat to its neighbors. This campaign will have failed. And Iran knows that. And they've also got this almost inexhaustible supply of Shahed drones, which are very cheap and easy to manufacture. They can churn out up to 500 a month of these things. They're small. I mean, yes, they can be shot down, but they've got so many of them that some of them get through. Bahrain, up the road from here, is getting hit nightly by these things. One of them landed 2 days ago, and set fire to the storage tanks at Bahrain airport. The commercial aircraft, the Gulf Air aircraft had flown out, but there was a large number of gallons of fuel left in these things, and it's been set ablaze. So Iran is still capable of wreaking a lot of economic damage on its Gulf Arab neighbors. And on this side of the Gulf, on the Arab side of the Gulf, people are not impressed by these statistics as to how many targets have been hit in Iran. They want this to end, and they want the threat to their own economies to end as well.
And Frank, we've seen oil prices around the world going up since this war began. Could the US military action on Kharg Island actually force Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and allow oil exports to resume?
Well, it could, but Iran's showing no sign of that. I mean, I think one of the miscalculations in this war is the belief in Washington and the Pentagon, perhaps, certainly in the White House, that the massive military advantage that the US has, it's unquestioned over Iran, will somehow intimidate the Iranians into desperately seeking a deal. I mean, yeah, they probably would like a deal, but on their terms as well. They are not going to give in. They're not going to just give up just like that. And if you remember, just cast your mind back to 2 weeks ago, the talks in Geneva, there were three things the Americans wanted to talk about. The nuclear file, and there was great progress on that. Iran was prepared to make some concessions. But there were two other areas that they wouldn't compromise. They wouldn't even talk about. One was ballistic missiles, because Israel is telling America, you've got to make the Iranians give up their ballistic missile program. And Iran said, nah, that's off the table. We're not discussing that. And the other was Iran's support for its proxy militias around the region, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, various militias in Iraq, and so on. And again, Iran said, that's off the table. So America went to war, and at the end of this war, look, if it ended tomorrow, all of those things would still be in place. Iran wouldn't have many ballistic missiles left, but it's got a lot of drones, and it's still a threat to its neighbors, and the regime is still in place. So it's kind of hard to see what's been achieved.